I hope you are enjoying our Easter retrospective through the years at First-Plymouth. And I hope you are well. On a digital service like this, I don't know where you are, maybe even who you are, but I hope you have a good measure of happiness in your life. Hey, life is hard. We're not deliriously happy all the time, but I hope you have a good portion of happiness. I hope you have a measure of good health right now. Our bodies, they can suffer, and good health is a thing to be prized. I hope that for you right now. I hope that you have a sense of self-actualization, meaning that you're able to express your individual self these days. You're a unique creation of God. I hope you have the opportunity these days to express yourself. Now, I hope all these good things for you, but let me say, Easter happens anyway. This is a God thing. Whether we're doing very well right now, it's Easter. Easter is the proclamation of the reality of God. That is our joy. Now, Easter joy does not override any sadness or struggle that we're experiencing. But Easter joy comes alongside us however you're doing and tells us if it's a tough time right now, that's not the end of the story. That in the end, all things will be well and all manner of things will be well. I want to tell you about sensus divinitas. That's a Latin phrase used by John Calvin, the great reformer in the 1500s. I want to tell you about it. Sensus divinitas. In Latin, that means the sense of God. John Calvin and others believed that every human being has an innate knowledge of the divine, that you have this intrinsic, inherent ability to sense the divine. They base this on the opening scriptures in Genesis that says you were made in the image of God. In Hebrew, that means like the imprint of God. You are naturally connected to the divine. But we tend to think mostly about theological beliefs. Sensus divinitas is more a feeling that you sense God. And on Easter, even though we celebrate all these specific theological claims that Christ has been risen, that the tomb is empty, that's very specific theological things. But for me on Easter, all of that activates that sensus divinitas in me. It animates that sense of God. We tend to turn our religion into a head thing and we devalue feelings. I want you to feel the reality of God, not just believe it or think it. Know it in your gut. If you poll Americans about whether they believe in God, like 90% will answer yes. And I think that is that sensus divinitas. They just know in their gut that there is God. But if you slightly change the question and you ask, are you certain of God or are you convinced? If you ask an American if they're convinced that God exists, it drops to only 64% because that puts them in their head and they think that God as an intellectual proposition instead of relying on the sensus divinitas. You can have for yourself a feeling of God. And that's what I hope for you this Easter morning. When we're saying that Christ is risen, that you feel activated in you, that we have a God of love, a God, an infinite God. You know, when you go to college and you take philosophy classes, a major stream of philosophical thinking is trying to prove that God exists. Rational proofs. But you will learn if you study Western philosophy that there is no proof that is considered successful because you can't prove an infinite thing. You can't prove infinity. You see, God is not a thing in the universe. God is not an object in the universe you could rationally validate. God is infinite. It's not so much that God is real, God is reality. It's not so much God exists. God is existence itself. You can't rationally prove that. And so I'm calling your attention to the sensus divinitas. You don't need a rational proof. You can feel it in you. There is God. There's a love beyond our wildest imagination. You are being held in ways beyond your imagination. And Easter reminds us that all things will be well. God bless you.